Okay, confession time. Are you making the most of the FM23 Data Hub? No? Well, honestly, neither was I. However, in this video, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this, and it was all whilst having my wage budget slashed in half by the board, and we have FM23's Data Hub to thank for this turnaround in form. Hello, welcome to another FM23 video on the Manager's Seat YouTube channel, and this one could be a bit of a game changer as we take a deep dive into the Data Hub on Football Manager. But before we do, I have my own confession to make. In FM23, I did a youth intake-only Let's Play series on my own YouTube channel where I played attributeless. You'd think that this would mean that I was reliant on data to assess my players. Well, come closer. Yep, little closer. I didn't use the Data Hub once in that save. Now, I feel bad about this. I watch FM23 experts such as RDF Tactics and TheCultOfFM create fabulous attributeless content relying on the Data Hub. But the truth is, I went in there, turned round and walked straight back out again. Oh, it's true! In fact, I got through an entire attributeless save, and all I used to pick players was the coach reports that described the pros and cons of each individual. It's damn true! Now come on, you lot can let me know down in the comments, how much do any of us really use the Data Hub? Is it something you rely on, or is it just something that we pretend that we use to look cool in front of our friends? Go on, comment down below. How reliant are you on the Data Hub? Anyway, I was quite happy keeping my lack of understanding of FM23's Data Hub as my guilty little secret. But then, I started streaming. And I went on a terrible run of form. And viewers in the chat were asking me on stream to show them info from the Data Hub so they could try and diagnose what was going wrong. And it quickly became obvious to everybody watching that I had no clue what I was doing. Shocking. However, as I was walking home after the stream, two men approached me and I was rightly nervous. But they took me by surprise, and instead of stealing my wallet, they offered to teach me everything about Football Manager's Data Hub. And they did. And this is the run of form that it led to. And now I'm here to teach it to you. Yes! So let's introduce you to our two young heroes. This is Isaac. And every morning, Isaac wakes up and eats data for breakfast. He loves data so much that he spends his working days analysing medical data so that he can cure diseases. And in the evenings, to unwind, he plays FM23 and analyses data in that too. Now, Isaac approached me and offered to teach me how to understand data in Football Manager. I thanked Isaac for his kind offer.
Why don't you explain this to me like I am an 8-year-old?
But I told him I'm just unteachable.
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
Unfortunately, I just don't have that kind of mind. Now, Isaac reassured me that data was not as confusing as I believed, and so I ventured back into the Data Hub. Now, here's my first problem. I walk in there and I see that the game has already decided what data I should be shown. I get presented some key findings, but what if I want to find something specific, such as where my strikers are taking shots from? I mean, I know that I can click on the Ask For button, but what am I supposed to type in here? If I search for where are my strikers shooting from, it shows me nothing. But Isaac very patiently explained that you can find any piece of data in the Data Hub, you just need to know where to look. So rather than searching for data in the Ask For section, you just click on the little downward facing arrow next to it, and all of the different data that you can look at is presented to you. Great Scott! Okay, so Isaac had me. That was a lot easier to find than I expected, but it didn't change the fact that I didn't really know how to read the data once I'd found it. Well, this is where Isaac really started to earn his fee. Isaac explained that there were essentially 6 types of data that we might come across in the game. The first are heat maps, which are used to track the positions of a team or a player. And these maps use the concept of heat to show where players are touching the ball. The colour black signifies the coldest areas of the pitch where there is very little activity, and red shows where players are touching the ball the most. These heat maps can be useful to show you how close to your own goal or to the opposition's goal you are on the ball. Next, Isaac introduced me to scatter graphs.
Dare I?
These are where two variables are plotted against each other to create a graph to help you understand how your team is performing compared to others in the league. Football Manager uses scatter graphs to help you interpret how your team performs aerially, how accurate your crossing is, how successful your team's tackling might be, and a whole lot more. In fact, you can search the Data Hub for scatter graphs that show the performance of your team, as well as the performance of individual players. Next, we moved on to zone maps, another piece of data that meant nothing to me.
No, God!
Isaac explained that these maps divide the pitch into 6 zones and track how frequently your team wins possession of the football in each zone. In this one, for example, you can see that only 1% of the times my team won the ball back were in the opposition box, whereas 36% of the times were in our own box.
I can't understand the defending.
In FM23, you can use zone maps to assess where you are completing the most defensive actions, such as tackles and headers, where you might be losing possession of the ball, the areas of the pitch where you're gaining possession of the ball, and even where you are attempting passes from. We moved on to polygons next, and by this point I was losing the sight in one eye. But Isaac patiently broke these down for me once more. He explained that FM23 uses polygons to compare your team's performance to the league average. He told me that the numbers on the polygon are not as significant as the shape. The key is, are you performing better or worse than the other teams in your league? For example, in this polygon, you can see that our expected goals against per game of 1.11 was higher than the league average, which indicates we're giving away too many chances. And you can also see that our tackles attempted per game of 19.07 is below the league average, so perhaps we're too passive in our defensive play. In Football Manager, you can view polygons to give you an overview of your attacking play, your defensive play, as well as your general performance, which contains selected information from both. Next, we have pass maps. Now, pass maps display the frequency that your players play the same pass that follows the same route. The key here is the colour. Where there is no line or a black space, it means no passes are played through that route, whereas light green means that passes are more frequently played in that passing route. In this pass map, for example, you can see that my team were playing far more passes on the left side of the pitch than they were down the right. And then Isaac introduced me to the final type of data in FM23.
No, God, please, no!
But don't worry, it's also the one I found the most useful.
I'm listening.
The last piece of information you'll find in Football Manager is raw data. Now, raw data is just a number that is presented in isolation. For example, think about the presentation of how many goals or assists a player has, or how many appearances they've made. Some of this raw data is related to individual players, and some of it is relevant to your entire team. For example, from the league table screen, you can click on Stats, go down to Team Detailed, and it will show you information such as your average possession, your average goals per game, the number of goals you've either scored or conceded from set plays such as corners and free kicks, even data such as the average number of dribbles attempted per game. Now, this team data can be really useful to help you assess whether your team is playing the way you want them to. I was trying to build a defensively solid counter-attacking wing play tactic, but this data showed me I was only 14th for expected goals against, 16th in terms of the tackles won percentage, had one of the worst records in the league for conceding from set pieces, and we'd only kept 6 clean sheets in 29 matches.
That spirit and that fight is not there in this group of players.
The other raw data that I found particularly useful was data to do with individual players to assess things such as their goals scored compared to their XG, or the amount of times a player has won possession back for the team compared to the amount of times they've given it away. Now, at this point, you could be forgiven for asking, where do you get yourself your very own Isaac? Well, I have the next best thing for you. Isaac has kindly put together a presentation of how to interpret data in Football Football Manager. To download it, all you need to do is to check out the video description below, where you will find a link to the Manager's Seat Discord server. And Isaac's guide to FM data is available in the downloads channel. Now, by this point, I was feeling pretty pleased with myself. I successfully cracked where to find the data I wanted in the Data Hub, and thanks to Isaac, I now knew the basics about how to read and interpret this data. But now it was time for the scary part. I asked Isaac, how do I know what changes to make to my tactic after I've analysed my data? For example, I now knew that my team were appalling at tackling, and we leaked very soft goals, and none of my strikers have scored as many as their XG suggests they should have, and we spend most of the game inside our own penalty area. But how do I change this? What buttons do I press? Well, Isaac said, for that, you need to speak to Mike. Now, Mike and I have spoken before. In fact, Mike was the brains behind one of the most popular videos on the Manager's Seat YouTube channel about how to press in FM23. Mike lives on the islands of the Azores in the Atlantic Ocean. By day, he sells cars, but at night he transforms into one of Football Manager's sharpest tactical minds. Think of Mike as like Mr. Miyagi, which makes me Daniel-san. No, not that scene. Yes, that's more like it. Now, the first thing Mike asked me was, how do I want my team to play? I explained my vision of a team that played using wing play and incisive counterattacks. I wanted to invite opponents into our half and then close them down mercilessly, winning back possession of the ball before launching a stinging counter. I did not want to be a long ball team, but I wanted to be direct. I wanted wide players that would terrify opponents by running at them. I wanted players in the box that could get on the end of crosses. But most of all, I wanted to be compact. I wanted teams to find us difficult to break down. That's perfect, Mike said. Having a vision of how you want your team to play is the difficult bit. The rest is easy.
Oh, thank God.
Mike explained that before we could start adjusting tactics, we first needed to analyse player data to help work out who should be in the team before analysing team data to work out what is going right and what is going wrong with the tactic. Only after looking at all of this data could we work out what to change in the tactic. We started with the player analysis using custom squad views which Mike had created. And if you like these custom squad views, Mike has made them available in the Manager's Seat Discord server. These different squad views help us to understand how our players are performing in FM23. The first allows us to analyse our goalkeepers. The second looks at our defensive output. The next analyses our supporting output. And finally, we have a view that allows us to assess the attacking output of our players. And Mike showed me how to go through these views and use them to assess who my best players were based on data rather than purely using their attributes. For example, my starting goalkeeper was Christian Dibble, and based on his attributes, I decided he was our #1 goalkeeper. However, using Mike's views, I could see that he was having what could only be described as a disastrous season. Dibble had started the most games, but had conceded the most goals, had let in almost 12 more than his expected goals against, is nearly 20% below his expected saves ratio, he fails to make over 60% of the passes he attempts, and he's made 3 mistakes that have directly led to goals.
Yeah, man's not the best, but
Mike showed me how to use these views to analyse some of the major strengths and weaknesses of the squad, and some trends started emerging, such as the number of players that were poor in possession and were giving the ball away more than they were winning it, as well as the poor performance of the strikers, who were nearly all underscoring compared to their XG. Maybe these were things that I could factor into the tactical changes I could make. How do we keep the ball better? How can we create more clear-cut chances? Mike then guided me through how to analyse team data. He showed me a table that listed us as 12th in the league, but according to our expected points, we should be 5th. Was this more evidence that we weren't winning games because we weren't creating enough scoreable chances? He also taught me through how to interpret some of the defensive data that Isaac had shown me. We were conceding roughly half a goal more per game than the expected goals against. Why were we so frail? How could we stiffen up our defence? Mike also showed me data about how many fouls we were conceding, something that was a big problem, considering how vulnerable we were from conceding from set set pieces. We'd also given up 293 shots to the opposition in under 30 games, and 116 of those were on target. And 41 of those shots went in, giving the opposition a conversion rate of 35%. A statistic Mike described as staggering. However, that was nothing compared to his reaction to the number of times we relinquished possession in our own third. You don't even want to know his reaction to that.
I give up.
Mike spent hours talking me through our creativity, our offensive performance, our defensive performance. And if you'd like to read a guide Mike wrote to help you analyse your own team's defensive performance against data, well, guess where you can find it? That's right, in the Manager's Seat Discord. After all of this analysis, I had a much better understanding of which players should be in the team and which should be left out, and what areas of the tactic were performing as I'd envisaged and which were letting us down. But how do you adjust your tactic to solve these problems? Well, there's some trial and error involved here. From the very early days of this journey, Isaac was keen to point out that data doesn't just serve up answers. It gives you information to help you come up with answers. You might not get the answer right first time. There might not even be just one answer, but you're more likely to find it having analysed data. Previously, I was like a blind squirrel hunting for nuts, just hoping to land on the winning formula by chance. But this time I decided to try and make changes based on our analysis of the data. We decided to work from back to front, trying to fix the defence first. We replaced the starting goalkeeper to try and eradicate some of the individual errors that were leading to goals. We then set about recreating all of our defensive set-piece routines with particular focus on those indirect free kicks. Next, we tried to tackle the goals being conceded from through balls and balls over the top of our defence. In fact, we made an entire video on how we did that, and we'll link to it above for you to watch straight after this video. We also tried to address the problems of our defenders giving away the ball far too frequently by setting their passing to short. And moving into midfield, we had another issue with possession, and that was in the centre of midfield. Mike spotted that game after game we had one midfielder who was repeatedly turning over the ball when looking to pass to strikers. Mike set me the challenge of trying to work out what the cause of this problem was, and eventually I got there. To rectify the problem, we switched our roles in midfield, making the more creative player the more offensive of the two midfielders, hoping that it would be this player that was playing the offensive passes rather than the ball-winning midfielder. We then set about addressing the problem of our wasteful finishing. We were having plenty of shots and dominating the XG, but we weren't scoring enough goals. We worked out that we were having attempts on goal from too far out, considering that lots of our efforts were headers, as we were a wing play team. This problem was amplified by the fact that relatively few of these headed chances were falling to our target forward, who has jumping reach of 17. Here, just a minor tweak had a significant impact as we changed the role that he was playing from a support duty to an attack duty, so that he was now more likely to be on the end of chances. But here's the million-dollar question: did these changes have the desired effect? Well, we went from one win in 15 games to winning 6 of the last 7 matches of the season, and we were undefeated in the first 13 matches of the next campaign, and we left the club second in the table when we accepted a new job at a side 2 divisions higher. Now, it's important to remember that analysing data doesn't give you the answers. You don't automatically know what tactical changes to make just because you've studied a heat map or explored a polygon. But what data can do is to help you prioritise what needs fixing in your tactic. It gives you an insight into what parts are playing well and what parts might need tweaking. It allows you to assess whether your vision for a style of play is being enacted out on the pitch. You might not find the right answers to your tactical problems immediately, but FM23's Data Hub can help you ask the right questions. And if you're looking for more information on the changes we made to this tactic based on data, well, check out this video next.